Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Pagano, and I'm the host today for Hera Media Group. And I have a really awesome gentleman that you're going to love to meet and hear about his story. He is a friend of the founder of Hera, the Light of Women, Marinella Mapuri. His name is Dr. Hani Findakly, and he resides in Virginia in the United States. So welcome, Dr. Hani. So great to have you here.
Thank you so much. And it's good to be with you.
Great. So I've got a few questions to ask you because people want to know. And the first question I want to ask you is, what was your upbringing like that prepared you for the success in life?
Oh, well, that's it's an open-ended question. As many people who know me, I grew up in Iraq, in the northern part of Iraq. What prepares me for what happened for the rest of my life is really a very simple story, which is a family upbringing that emphasizes the value and quality of education. My parents, neither of my parents went to college or finished high school, but they emphasized very early on and understood very early on the value of education. So they pushed all of their six children, myself being the oldest, into education. And so the end result is that all of their six children not only finished college, they all had graduate degrees. Two out of the six got PhDs, and every other one got at least a master's degree, multiple degrees. So that's really a built-in from whether it's biological or parental linkage from the very beginning.
Gosh, you know what? That is awesome. And when I hear stories, especially when families have hardships and challenges and they still manage to get their children to school, I just go, wow, they want to change the cycle. They want their children to be able to take care of themselves. So kudos to your parents. That's brilliant.
Yes,
So I saw you have an engineering background, correct? Civil engineering?
that is correct.
Yeah, all my sisters are engineers, so is my father. I think my father taught every CEO in America, but yeah. So anyway, the other question I wanted to ask you was investment banking your first career choice, or was there another passion that you passed on?
Well, no, it wasn't. You mentioned about my going into engineering. My first interest was in medicine. And because a lot of my family members, my uncles, my father's cousins, my mother's sisters and brothers all went to medicine. They were doctors, they were pharmacists, they were all surgeons. And so it was natural for me to go into medicine. I did enroll in medical school, started out, but had some questions about whether or not that's what I wanted to do. So I switched into engineering. And engineering was supposed to be my life target. It was only during graduate school and following that I started switching. When I entered into MIT as a graduate student, it was a life-changing experience because they never looked at me as an engineer, but they looked at me as somebody who has skills and can enter into a more multidisciplinary fields. So they allowed me to explore. So artificial intelligence was an early passion of mine. Then economics and finance. And that's how I got into the World Bank. I was teaching economics and finance. And it was then that I started the transition into finance and investments, which led me into investment banking. So it's it's like a lot of careers. You sort of transition, and by accident, you step into something that you find you have passion for. I tell my children, I tell all the young people that I've worked with over the years, is that you'll always find your passion. Don't be deterministic about your future. You can control it, and it sometimes happens by accident, sometimes happen by design. But in the end, it's what you feel passion and ability to deliver excellence that makes a difference, and that's what happened to me.
Oh, what a great story. So the university really gave you some flexibility and some mentorship, it sounds like, in order for you to like transition from engineering to what was it about medicine that made you decide, no, not for me?
I think of the word formaldehyde. The smell of that chemical in the labs as I was walking around the university and College of Engineering, College of Medicine, that sort of got me to rethink as to whether or not I'm going to spend the rest of my life smelling those chemicals. And
I
that
love
probably,
it.
yeah, it sounds very naive and very simplistic, but it happened to be the case.
You know what? Whatever career you choose, it's kind of your life, right? So you want to live a life that you like and enjoy, even from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, right? So you're the having to smell the formaldehyde. That can be a big thing, when you think about it.
It
So,
was.
oh my
Absolutely.
gosh, that was brilliant. So then you went to investment banking. What did you miss anything about the engineering? Were there things that you thought you were going to do as an engineer that you didn't do because you went over to investment banking? Was there any?
Well, I can't think of specific things that I miss. I did have an early career in engineering for about 2 or 3 years. And I still am in touch with my former colleagues from the College of Engineering. There may be about 15 or 20 of them that we get together on Zoom. We found each other after almost 40 or 50 years.
Wow,
That
nice.
we speak to each other, and they're all highly accomplished. One of my friends lives in Kansas City, who designs all these big projects. Half of the football stadiums that you see around the United States are designed by him, and a number of others highly accomplished colleagues of mine. I think about a third of my graduating class got doctorate degrees, and maybe almost over half had graduate degrees, and they went into very, very deep practice, leadership and engineering. So when we get together, we compare notes, and I can't help but admire the achievements that they have. But I can't think that I miss it. Maybe I live it vicariously through my friends, but miss it probably not.
You made the right choice. I see that you spent 11 years as former chief investment officer at World Bank. What was your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome and succeed?
Uh, the World Bank was a great experience for me. It was an experience because although, with the exception of an early start, I never really got involved into development work, projects management, and things of that type. But I was involved in managing the resources, the financial resources of the organization. And one of the things that was inspiring for me is that I believe that every time we did well, I did well, it was generating resources that were helping the poor, that were helping into development, that were helping bring in relatively low cost financing that became more abundant and more available the more we worked hard. So that was the inspiration. The challenge was to deliver and execute, like a lot of things you do in life. Execution is the most important. And the biggest challenge that you have in organizations that, like the World Bank, they're big bureaucracies, they're big political organizations, they're big low risk takers. So to try to get them to understand that in order to make more resources available, you need to take more risk. So this accepting of the concept of risk creating a culture that accept risk was the biggest challenge I had. So it took a long time to do that, but I guess I could probably say that we're a bit successful into doing that, but the success came more because of the results we delivered, and so it became a vicious circle. The more successful you are, the more acceptance of risk there will be in the organization. And yet, every now and then, as you know, in being dependent on markets and whatever, you have setbacks from time to time, and it's always on those setbacks that you create asymmetry in the risk and the reward. If you're taking risk and you get successful, there are no rewards other than the psychic income that you get from it. But if you take risk and you deliver negative results, you get punished. So that was the biggest challenge that I faced in that organization.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, what led you to the Clinton Group? What inspired you to take the vice chairman role?
Oh, that came towards the latter part of my career. When I left the World Bank, I became the head of the international division for a large investment bank, which no longer exists now. But I had managed a very large division of that included several thousand employees spread out in about, I don't know, 7 or 8 countries around the world, from Japan to Hong Kong, to London, to Paris, to Frankfurt, and so forth. And so managing that organization brought me into investment banking, and that was a very hard work that involved managing 7 or 8 different corporations with 7 different jurisdictions and governments and regulations and markets and challenges. So it was it was a very tough and hardworking transition, but great learning experience that brought me in contact with customers and clients and regulators and counterparties, and having to manage the lives of several thousand hard-charging staff and employees around the world with different cultures and different style of work. So it was after several years of doing that that I decided to step down and set up either a small entity that I manage on my own, so I don't have any more bosses to to account for, and I didn't have to have a large number of employees that I was going to be responsible for. So I decided to take a slower life, maybe take a time to write a couple of books, which I had some ideas about. I had toyed with the idea of returning to academia. I was offered a position as a dean of business school of prominent university, which I was very tempted about, but at the end I rejected that. So Clinton Group came to be a good, not so much low intensity, but it did not involve the day-to-day responsibility that I had for the last 20 or 30 years before that. So it led me there because they had a culture of excellence. They were very quantitative in their approach. Everything was designed by computers and numbers and whatever, which appeals to my own background and skills. Plus the fact that they were very successful, had very good track record, and had extremely highly qualified individuals. So my role was to try to take that organization and create more of a culture of consistency, trying to balance off the interests of the customers, the clients for whose money the organization was managing, against the regulators who have to set up the different rules and regulations by which the investment managers and investment bankers have to live with, and against, of course, the shareholders and the employees. And it's a balancing act. My other role was also to try to take a macro sort of 30,000 feet view of the business itself. And given my long-term connection with many firms in Wall Street, we're able to try to find ways of cooperating with these institutions and also introducing new technologies. I think Clinton Group at the time was one of the early introducers of artificial intelligence, for example, in management. This is way before artificial intelligence became known to a number of people. So this was
Called
about
what it's called. Yeah, exactly.
this was about 18 years ago. So that was very good, and that was really my reason for joining that board.
Yeah. So what was the most exciting part of the journey, or the most important project you did with Clinton Group?
Well, as I said, I think introducing a new technology concept to an organization that was highly steeped in technology and mathematics and quantitative fields was a very exciting one, because I could deal with people, and they like the idea that they're dealing with senior, governance people who are equal to them, because in many cases on Wall Street, and that's one of the biggest challenges that the financial industry today faces, is that many of the younger people who come and work and do most of the work and produce most of the results are highly qualified physicists, mathematicians, computer experts, and they're all very smart, very highly educated, very well steeped into numbers and data and things of that type. And yet the people who supervise them, or to whom they report to, are totally unfamiliar with these kind of things. They're good managers. They have general concepts of finance and management, but they're completely out of depth as to the technology and the instruments that these younger people are doing. And it becomes a dilemma. If you ask hard questions and try to fully understand it, which is difficult, you slow down the progress and the ability to generate profits and make money. If you don't, you become ignorant of things, and that's how big surprises that firms face, and many of them fail because of that. Most of the failures that you have in big banks and big organizations and the scandals they create is a disconnect between senior management that is on the line to the shareholders and to the regulators, and the young people who could care less about any of these things, and they're very highly focused on what they do. It's that disconnect that creates most of the problems that the financial industry has faced. And one of my, I think, my role at the Clinton Group is to bridge that, because I think I understood the majority of what these young technicians were doing, as well as they have, and that they generate some respect and ability for them to come to you with both ideas and problems before they arise, so that you can manage them together. And that was really a big satisfaction for me.
Wow. Your background and experience just make you, mad talented. You know that, right?
I don't know.
Well, I do. And listen, I grew up with a family of engineers. I was in tech with AT&T, GE, and Motorola. Sometimes
I
the
saw
only
that. I saw that you have very
yeah,
impressive resume. Yeah.
yeah, like the only woman in the room for a long time. And
Yeah.
talking about the challenges between the people that understand, the technology or the platform and what they're doing, and the upper management that does not. I think that resides in every industry, quite frankly. It just gets to the point that technology and everything is changing so rapidly that if you're not hands-on with it every day, and as you start to, lead businesses and teams, all of a sudden you're not as hands-on anymore. And it is a huge disconnect, I think, for every industry, actually. But I love the fact that you pointed it out, that it happened to be in the financial segment as well, which is fascinating.
Well, it is. It is, at least in the field that I know, which is in finance. The higher you go in ranking, and that's the dilemma. The higher you go, the less connected you are to what's going on, and because of precisely what you've pointed to, which is the fact that technology is changing very, very, very fast. And the higher up you go, no matter how well prepared you are, unless you keep up, you lose connection to what's going on the ground, and it is the loss of connection between reality and and perception is that makes a difference. I always use the example of companies that fail despite excellence, and I use the example of the Singer sewing machine. That name may resonate only with people of certain age, but Singer sewing machine was a premier sewing machine that women around the world have used for the last maybe 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. And until the day they went out of business and they were bought out by a small private equity firm, they continued to produce excellent sewing machines. And yet women weren't sewing anymore, and the technology of sewing and the need for home sewing declined, and the company did not know what's going on. So their managers and their executives were all focused on making sure that they produce great sewing machines, and they have the marketing ability and the management to produce it and distribute it, and the engineers at the bottom would just focus on doing doing their job of producing good sewing machines. And at the end, neither side saw what's going on around them. So it's that that disconnect from the world and that change in technology that swipes and wipes out a lot of existing businesses unless they are focused on seeing what's going on.
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine, Charlie Muirhead, runs a big AI conference called CogX in London. As a matter of fact, it goes on next week. But the whole AI, right, is going on another level of crazy, which will be interesting. I know for us at Hera, and with Hera City, we're very concerned about what AI will do for humanity. So we are very attuned to it and keeping tabs on everything that's happening. So, okay, so I have another question for you. Of all your accomplishments in life, which one are you most proud of, or are you still working towards it?
Well, the answer to the last question is that you can't stop. You have to keep going. So there is no way that you could look back and say, okay, I've done everything there is to do, so now I'm ready to die. That that is not a very good formula for life. But it may surprise you that my perception of my biggest accomplishment really is satisfaction that I was able to create a great family life. I'm very proud of my children, who have all gone into great accomplishment and doing very well. My son spent 7 years of his life doing graduate studies in China, and learned Chinese language and culture, and wrote a graduate thesis in, in Mandarin Chinese. My daughter went to did international affairs, sort of following a little bit of some of the interests I have, and was the top graduate in her business class, and is doing very well. And my wife of 49 years, who was one of, you talk about women in business. She graduated as a lawyer, and I think she was one of only 2 or 3 students at her large law classes, and did very well. And so my biggest accomplishment, if I can, is produce satisfactory life that created a balance between career and work, and have a great satisfaction from both. Thank you.
Bravo. That is bravo. That's what it's all about, right? We're here to live.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I wish my father was still alive so you could meet him. The two of you would get on like a house on fire.
Yes.
So, Professor, is there anything that you want to share with the group that I haven't asked?
Well, I had a chance to. You've asked all the questions that, as I told you, I think you've thrown what looks like softballs, but they're really tough and hard and challenging question, because they allow you for some reflection and self examination. So thank you for that. One of the things that I have, when I met your founder, Marinella Marpori, I was very impressed with her passion and interest, and I think it's her passion and interest as much about the subject itself that interested me quite a bit. When I was both at the World Bank and in corporate America, I've always pushed the role of women in both in professionalism as well as in management, and I thought that they were not given their due. I could see that in, in the role of my wife as a lawyer, and my daughter and my nieces and whatever. So I always thought that women not only were not given enough role to play in society, but even the role they play, they have played historically, which is raising the family and taking care of their children and household and whatever, was not very well appreciated, not well understood. And in fact, when you look at because even in today's society, where we've seen some good achievements in seeing women rise into politics and into corporate America, they still are underachieving in terms of equality with men. But the more important thing to me was the fact that women's contribution, historical contribution, and ongoing contribution is not very well understood. Very few economists really understood the contribution of women. And in fact, if you measure the GDP or the GNP of an economy of a country, we rarely account for the role of women in raising children and managing household and doing things. Even in societies where historically women were given a lower role, for example, under Sharia Islam, in Islamic countries, women get half the inheritance that men have. And whether or not you argue that's fair or unfair, that's a religious precept you can't argue against. But what people haven't done is to understand that even with getting half the inheritance, that women, both as mothers, as wives, as mediators in marriages, play a much more powerful role than the half role that they have in society. And to that extent, I think we underestimate their role and undervalue the contribution you have. So I appreciate what you're doing, Hera. I see and note the fact that you have these very ambitious projects of big hero cities in Morocco and elsewhere. I just, like to continue to support that, although I'm personally not a very big fan of ideas of big cities, new big cities. I think it's much more effective. We've seen big cities that have been created. We've seen it in Brazil, in Africa, in Asia, now in Egypt. They have been total failures and they have not worked very well. Now, I don't know whether they were failures because they were poorly planned or purely managed, or whether conceptually they are not correct. So I hope that you take note of that and ensure that, given the scarcity of resources you have, is where you put your biggest resources, either whether it's restructured, making deals with existing mayors and governors of cities, big or small, to reform them, to restructure them, to achieve the objectives you have, or to start de novo with very big investments that may or may not deliver and take much longer time to deliver. So that's the only thought I have that we have not discussed.
Thank you. Appreciate your insight. Yes, we are aware and we're paying very close attention. So thank you. Really appreciate your support. So anyway, this is Mary Pagano and Dr. Hani. I really appreciate your time today and sharing your experience, which is so valuable for so many. And you've contributed to humanity in such a big way, in so many different ways. And thank you for that as well. So with that,
well, I appreciate the chance, and thank you so much, and wish you all the best at Hera.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, you will find Dr. Hani's information in the profile, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.